We all see it. We live it every day. A screen for every occasion and a platform for every need. Content is fragmented, and media consumption is at an all-time high. With so many changes and advances in technology, advertisers are trying their best to keep up, if not stay ahead. But they're not alone. It's not just advertising that's changing, rather the entire media ecosystem. For generations, advertisers have adhered to the philosophy of reach and frequency to influence audiences, to drive awareness, and to make the sale. It's pretty foolproof considering the limited mediums in which an audience could be found. All you had to do was simply interrupt the audience's experience and turn their attention to you. Obviously, interruptive advertising is still very much alive today. However, living in the digital age has its perks. Digital and social media have opened a dialogue with the masses. A conversation has begun, and the people have spoken. They have a right to choose where, when, and how content is consumed. This is wreaking havoc on the old tenets of the advertising and media world and forcing advertisers to change. If consumers don't want their entertainment interrupted with advertising, advertising must become the entertainment. It's truly the end of an era, the end of interruptive advertising. To understand this new era, we took our crew to Park City, Utah for the first ever brand storytelling event at the Sundance Film Festival.
We've brought over 160 of the smartest people in advertising and marketing, from agency folks and brand folks, publishers, digital platforms, and the like. We've asked them what's going on with this wide stride away from interruptive advertising to great storytelling from brands. Let's take a look now.
I spent an hour with Lewis Henderson, a nearly 20-year vet at William Morris, during which time they made him head of digital in 2006. For the past 8 years, he's been CEO of the marketing arm, the Omnicom agency behind Pepsi's Uncle Drew series and the Jeff Gordon test drive.
Brand integration within content has been around for a long time. You go back to early television, we know how that was launched, and there was a lot of integration there. I think there was a resurgence of that in early 2000. And so you saw a tremendous amount of interest, I think, in just how brands were going to play within the entertainment business moving forward. And I think you've seen a resurgence of what integration and placement and things like that meant. All the while, you were seeing now this new platform that had launched in the 90s, had sputtered a little bit because the technology wasn't as up to par to create the experience that the consumer wanted. But as you know, by 2004, there was a shift, and now the technology was up to speed, the processing powers were there, and the medium was exploding to share video and to launch video. But then you saw this new platform that was starting to be created, which had a lot of freedom, and we were still trying to figure out the business model there. Was it pre-roll, lower third, what have you? And that to me was an important shift, where I had been in this digital space, sitting in front of bunches of people telling them that someday you will watch movies on this. And guess what? You might even do it on your phone.
Crazy talk.
Crazy talk. So seeing that kind of come to life is where I kind of decided to make my own career change. That the brands needed a place to tell their story and how to tell their story in the way that they wanted to. And they could still try to do it on television, but it was going to be harder to do that and more expensive. And here was a medium that was emerging that enabled them to do that.
But as we learned, brands cannot just be storytellers. They must be relevant and provide value. We caught up with David Beebe, the VP of Global Creative and Content Marketing for Marriott International. Talk about pioneering. Marriott is investing in a global content studio run by Beebe that is producing everything from Snapchat stories to feature-length films, with the intent to be the world's largest provider of travel-related content.
In order for us to be relevant, we have to adapt. So the company has a long history of continual innovation in the space. So going from a root beer stand in 1927 to serving hot food to putting food on airlines, there's just this great story of constant change. And I think that's one thing that's allowed us to be so successful. But we realized that in order to engage with next-gen travelers, millennial audience, we have to change the way that we market to them. And it's about a conversation now. It's about loyalty. It's about really people-to-people marketing and building a relationship. And one way that we do that is with content.
David cut his storytelling teeth working at Disney's ABC TV group, and now runs what is probably the largest brand-funded content studio on the planet.
Travel itself also lends itself to storytelling. Right? You are telling people where you're going, you're creating content along the way. So all of those things combined together is what's really brought us into this world of branded entertainment, content marketing, whatever you want to call it. And we have been playing in all of those areas, whether it's short films, webisodes, television shows, books, documentaries, all over the place. But again, the idea there is really how do we win the hearts, minds, and wallets of next generation consumers through storytelling versus trying to sell you something right from the top. And saying, hey, look at us, aren't we great? Look at our pool, look at our great restaurant we have. It's how do I connect with you as an individual? What are your passion points? How do I hook you in and entertain you and inform you first and build that relationship? That idea that I provide value to you first. I have to provide value. Once I provide value to you, by doing one of those things, then I can say, oh, by the way, we also sell hotel rooms. And I know you have intent to travel, because on Google I know you've been looking, or I provided you content that got you to this point. Don't you want to stay with us?
In 2004, Morgan Spurlock took home a Best Director award from Sundance for his film Super Size Me, which chronicled his 30-day McDonald's-only diet and the impact it had on his physical and mental health. He had so much fun poking the bear in that film. 7 years later, he produced The Greatest Movie Ever Sold, a film about product placement, marketing, and advertising. The film itself was funded entirely by the very companies examined in the documentary, an opportunity for brands to relinquish their guards and participate in a film all about transparency.
What happened after Greatest Movie Ever Sold is I think it made a lot of brands say, we could be a part of a smart conversation and actually be a part of that without feeling like we're being taken advantage of, without feeling like we have to sell you something. Like that's the other thing. I think a lot of brands felt like in the middle of the conversation, suddenly you had to go, and what about this beautiful beverage? You had to have that terrible product placement or those shots of real, I don't know, promotion, I guess, from a brand perspective. But that shifted, and I think after Greatest Movie Ever Sold, it shifted dramatically.
If history could change.
Yeah.
And today you were starting to do that movie.
Greatest Movie Ever Sold.
Yeah.
We'd get a lot more brands. I tell you what would be different, if we made that movie today, you'd see a lot more big legacy brands saying yes. Because I think the big legacy brands are still afraid of a lot of content, especially content they can't control 100%. But I think you'd find more brands that would be willing to give up that creative IP with a trusted filmmaker, with a trusted storyteller.
Well, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's not the brands.
Yeah.
It's the people at the brands. It's
Sure.
the legal department.
Sure.
It's the PR department.
Yeah.
Because there are some innovative marketers
Yeah.
years ago
But so
that
long
wanted
as-
a brand to do it. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, but
I mean,
I-
you talked to some of them.
But listen, a CMO can't hide behind our lawyer won't let us do it. So let's be honest. I mean, the chief marketing officer has the creative freedom to do whatever they want. It's not the lawyer's fact. Like if you're the chief marketing officer, you should be able to market and create the creative any way you like within the company's landscape. There are legal parameters you have to fall into, but you drive that creative voice and you can't pass the buck on to lawyers. And I think that what happened when we were making Greatest Movie Ever Sold is all these underlings who were so excited about the idea would pass us up to the CMOs, and then the CMO would pass. Because ultimately, 5 years ago, and it's still very much similar today, people are afraid of losing their jobs. That if I take a chance, if I take a risk, I'll be judged and it doesn't work. People say, well, that didn't work, let's find somebody else, and they'll fire you. And I think that we don't give enough freedom for people to take risks. We don't give enough freedom for people to take chances. And so we would go back down to the underlings that we would talk to who pushed us up to the CMO, and these people would say, God, I can't believe he didn't do it. I can't believe she didn't go for it. You know what? Listen, I'll do anything I can to help you that won't get me fired. And so all these people down here were our greatest champions, while I think a lot of people up here were very afraid of, I think, the end result. I think what you've seen now, as this has kind of come full circle, you're seeing brands saying, we can make fun of ourselves, we can be in on the joke, we can make stuff that's smart and funny and engages with an audience in a different way. And you've seen that with Funny or Die, you've seen that with Jash, you've seen the way that you can create branded content that has a real distinct, unique point of view, but can still be loyal to the DNA of whatever the company is. You know, it's basically you have to create an alignment of ideologies. Like, here's what I want to create with this, here's what you want it to be. Those can align in a way that I think is valuable for both of you, where it's not selling a widget, it's ultimately storytelling.
Today, Spurlock works closely with brands to help them find and tell honest, authentic stories. This idea of authenticity is spread like wildfire. Brands and creative agencies are coming around and learning to pour substance and value into their messages.
you have to create something. You have to think out of the box. You can't just list product benefits. You can't take your research from your focus groups and take the 10 attributes that need to be heard by your consumer target and try to shove that in a 30-second spot.
We used to be so concerned about getting our message into a 12-second video so that we could be in front of something in a pre-roll in a very interruptive fashion. And now we're so much more into finding longer forms and finding ways to get people interested in the products and messages that we have. But it means we have to give them something of interest to get them to watch it. And it's a very different dynamic than for years and years. Ad agencies bought time for clients and we interrupted people doing what they were doing and we showed them the messages.
What I wish my clients would do more actually is approach TV commercials like they approach digital content, because I think the creative that's coming out from the digital content, whether it's lessening their GARs or different KPIs, is way more creative and is actually way more beneficial to the brand. And I think it's only a matter of time until you see a lot more transition from digital content to television content.
Interruptive advertising was set up to capture people's attention. We thought as long as we did that, we would, and get the message across, as long as people could see it, hear it, touch it, feel it, we would achieve our goals. And now we're finding that that's just simply not true. They might see it, they might hear it, but ultimately it's not going to resonate.
We all have the same sort of habits, or a lot of us have the similar consumption habits, right? And so interruptive advertising is just that. It's interruptive, right? You're disrupting my experience and it doesn't necessarily help you, right? It's frustrating. I was doing something last night on my phone and all of a sudden I wanted to do something. I wanted to read an article and this ad would not leave me alone. And I was getting so irritated that I was like, you know what? I don't like you anymore. And I think that's the point, right? Which is stop disrupting my experience and give me something that will create value.
Stop interrupting what people are interested in and become what they're interested in. And technology allows us to do that in many, many ways. So storytelling is a big part of that from the creative perspective, but it's also about how do I deliver that right message at the right time, the right device, so that exactly when you're looking for it. And we make that, one-to-one, people-to-people marketing connection.
A good example of a one-to-one marketing connection is the work the marketing arm produced for Dove Men Plus Care.
The first two clients that we worked with were Unilever and Pepsi.
Right.
And in Unilever to start with, we were acting as in that liaison position, and they were launching a new product called Dove Men Plus Care, which is a big product line, and saw the opportunity of creating digital content first to help launch that brand. And right place, right time, with some other circumstances of deals falling through, gave us that opportunity to step up and say, hey, we can produce this piece for you, and then it went from there. We launched a little viral video for them around Father's Day, which was called Call for Dads. All you hear in that campaign is daddy, but the story that's being told, everyone can see it through the lens, and how, if you're a father, how important that is, just to hear that call for daddy, whether it's one for help, whether it's one in joy, whether it's a question, but that's another way of telling a story about the different roles that fathers play today, in a very simple form of using really one word to do that. Now flash forward to the most recent campaign around Dove Men Plus Care, where we're taking kind of the highlight reel of an athlete and turned it on its head to look at what the family life highlight reel looks for them.
That's great. And
so that's launching now with Carson Palmer and Jordy Nelson, and if you see they're 2.5 minutes long, but it's really them talking about their personal life as their highlight reel and what's important to them and what they think are the highlights in their life. So once again, turn on a camera, ask some questions, point in a direction, and you see these stories for real people come out, and enjoyed seeing how that campaign has just continue down that storytelling line.
I think it's really important for brands to learn how to tell great stories and not great commercials or great ads. And I think the bar is raising. We are living in a time where audiences are more difficult to reach than ever before. We see massive fragmentation. People are spending over 31 hours in a day engaged in activity. There's only 24 actual hours in a day, which means they're multitasking, packing more in.
It makes you think about the math on that one.
It does. You're like, wait, hang on a second.
Right.
We're not superhuman. We're just doing more at once.
Right.
Massive empowerment of audiences. So, consuming content on their own terms and sometimes paying for it and, to avoid ads. And then the economics of the entire industry are completely flipping. It's more expensive for us to reach audiences than ever before. The cost per reach point has grown exponentially. Our budgets have grown incrementally at best. And so what it's really, unearthed for us is that it's no longer good enough to just interrupt. We have to actually make the content that's going to earn attention. And so for me, coming to Sundance was really important to, meet with the best in the business in terms of people who tell great stories, people who can connect with audiences. And I think it's a different skill set than what we're used to within marketing and advertising.
A lot of the challenges that brands face, classic brands, you've got people running those marketing organizations, brand marketers that are classic marketers. Meaning they went to whichever school they went to, they got their MBAs and they've been, doing it for a long time. And storytelling was never part of any education or experience because it never had to be. You controlled the message. I could tell you what you wanted to, I wanted to tell you and you were going to listen to it because you didn't have a choice. And so then you've got this world of, wait a minute, content creators and storytelling coming in, and those two worlds don't always get along. And that's where the problems start. So you've got to, organizationally, there's got to be change and runway and given to go do these kind of things and experiment.
Well, there's such an empowered audience now, because now the Yelpification of our world, the Twitterification of our world, where something goes down, it can storm, it can avalanche in seconds. And I think that's exciting because it really does bring power to a consumer now for the first time. Like now there's a reaction point where a consumer can lash out and talk back and get results from a brand perspective. That's why, you've heard it a long time, and it's something that we really stand by, though. Authenticity is important. There is a bullshit gauge now within the audience that filter is, they know right away. They can smell bullshit a mile away. And I think that if you aren't being authentic and you aren't being true to kind of what you stand for, either as a storyteller or as a brand, they know it.
If brands are becoming content producers and telling their own stories, then what is the role of a media company? And how are TV networks dealing with the realities of interruptive advertising when their whole business model is predicated on just that? I went down to the CNN Lounge on Main Street to sit down with Mikhail Shapira, the Senior Vice President and Head of Content Partnerships for the Turner News Division.
This is to me, I find to be such an incredible opportunity to talk to you because you're looking over truly multi-platform, but more importantly, creating vanguard native advertising for network television. Talk a little bit about that.
That's absolutely right. So we recently announced a new product that we just launched, and it's called Turner Native Plus. And the idea behind it is to combine really great branded content with the scale of TV and allow our advertisers to buy a truly holistic 360-degree native package. So here's how it works. Basically, you come out of a piece of programming and you have a on-screen graphic or a intro or a connector, if you will. Then what we do is we take the entire ad break of 30-second spot and we replace it with one contextually relevant piece of branded content. Then we follow that up with an outro or another connector, and then we go back to programming. So we can create that branded content on behalf of the advertiser, or they can actually bring their own. We think it's going to be really appealing to a lot of advertisers who are looking to go beyond that 30-second spot and cut through the clutter.
To help brands create great content, CNN has launched a content studio they call Courageous. Courageous exists to help brands find and tell their stories with the same sort of rigor that lives within their journalistic teams.
We wanted to create a studio that would be focused on just telling really great stories and drafting off of the heritage of CNN and the journalistic integrity of all the work that they do there every single day. So we hired the best of the best. We hired Otto Bell to lead the team. He is the VP and Group Creative Director. Brilliant guy, just the most creative mind you can possibly imagine.
Talk to us about what's unique about what's happening at Turner and CNN and how the business model, the content strategy model of Courageous working with brands is set up to thrive.
Courageous is built on this idea of identifying relevance in a brand story and dragging that out into the sunlight and making sure that sees the light of day. I've hired and recruited a team of video journalists. I mean, I'm the odd man out at Courageous because I have an advertising background. Everybody else who I've brought on board has a background in editorial or news gathering. So they're Emmy winners, they're Murrow winners. These are bona fide journalists who've now made the transition over to the brand storytelling world. And what that allows us to do is to identify that newsworthy kernel of relevance in every brand story, and then pull that out because they know how to wrestle a story to the ground. They know how to identify a really compelling narrative angle. We just did a wonderful series of short films for Subaru, which I'm very proud of, and I think they really speak to the creative capability of Courageous because they were sourced, they were produced, they were shot, they were edited, and then they were distributed all in-house, all by my self-sufficient team. So cinematography, web development, reporting, interviewing, all of that done by the full-time staff. So no outsourcing, no freelancers. We were sure of the quality that we were going to be able to produce. You know, it's this old production conundrum, right? You've heard it. You can have work that's good, you can have work that's fast, and you can have work that's affordable. You get to pick two of those things, right? We're getting very close to cracking that conundrum. And you know, it's not unlike what's happening right now in the brand and entertainment world, where you have brands leaving behind old models, leaving behind dusty thinking, and taking brave steps into storytelling, and realizing that you don't really have to continually hit people over the head with an interruptive message, with a call to action. You can actually engender great amounts of consideration and awareness by inviting people into a genuine story.
You know, if you think about the traditional advertising value chain, which existed the same way for decades and decades, you've got content creators at the top of that chain. They come up with the content, they develop it, they produce it, they distribute it. We show up at the very bottom. So we interrupt with ads. We're one of many different advertisers, and we've become really good at that. We're good at making the 30-second ad, we're good at measuring it, and it makes us feel good when we kind of sign off on a script. The reality is that that's going away. It's not gone entirely, but it is going away. And so for us, the delta really is, you know, how do we go from transactional media buyers to content investors? So how do we actually lift ourselves up that value chain so that we're no longer just interrupting the content, we're actually creating it and owning it? And what's important for us is actually to think about content as intellectual property. So not necessarily just an integration that we might do with a media partner, but real IP that we own, because we think that there's a lot of value in that.
Prior to digital, the internet, it's two-way communication, you know, advertisers controlled when, where, and how consumers interacted. You know, if you wanted to watch your TV show, you had to sit down with the family, the captive audience you had as a network, and they had no choice. They had to watch your advertising. And that's how you delivered mass media, mass marketing to an audience to let them know what you were doing as a brand, essentially. Obviously, with technology coming along and enabling people to say, wait a minute, now I can control what I watch, where I watch it. And oh, by the way, I'm also a content creator. So now now everyone's creating content, right? And so what's the opportunity for the brands in that space? So today, consumers are now in charge how do we engage with them?
You can make movies that are 90 minutes, you can make stories that are 60 minutes, that are 30 minutes, that are 10 minutes. And I think brands have come to realize that there's a place for them at the table, because it doesn't matter if it says Paramount Pictures or Pepsi Presents. We can work together to make a great story that isn't just about hawking a product. It's about telling great stories and connecting with an audience in a unique and original way.
It typically starts off with, all right, we're gonna do this branded content. Everything's great. We partner with some creators and influencers, and we're gonna let you do what you wanna do, right? And then you get a cut back, and it's like, wait a minute, you put our logo in there, wait, our brand proof points aren't coming through. And it turns into a commercial. And then you got the exact same thing. It becomes interruptive advertising again, right? So there's a fine balance in this new creative renaissance that's happening of art and commerce and science coming together with digital, that you really have to have really smart people that come from media, that also understand marketing, and all together in technology to deliver that exact right message at the right time, right place, right screen, where it adds that value. And the consumer says, I understand that was advertising, but I wanted it at that time, and so I'm cool with it. I'm going to engage with you now. You got my attention. What else do you got?